1967. The campaign of North Vietnamese General Giap is going badly. The Americans are applying the pressure on a dozen battlefields. His troops are taking mounting casualties and suffering from a loss of morale. He desperately needs a major victory. But the target he selects hands him one of the costliest defeats of the war and gives the Allies spectacular confirmation that a ground battle can be won by air power. Khe Sanh, an Allied base manned by U.S. Marines and 1 battalion of South Vietnamese Rangers. Cornerstone of the defense line where the demilitarized zone and the Laotian border meet. The mountains surrounding Khe Sanh overlook the Ho Chi Minh Trail. To Giap and to some Western observers, Khe Sanh's similarity to Dien Bien Phu make it a lucrative target, one that might bring a victory as decisive as the one that forced the French withdrawal a decade before. Into the area, Giap moves 2 full divisions, more than 20,000 men, and positions them to surround the 6,000 defenders. A 3rd division is moved toward the Marine base at Camp Carroll. As the battle lines are drawn and the Marines repulse foes against their tightened perimeter, General William Westmoreland gives his Deputy Commander for Air, General William Momeyer, operational control of all air elements in the defense of Khe Sanh. On January 19th, the largest and best coordinated air campaign of the war is launched against the enemy. Land routes blocked, every ounce of food, every round of ammunition must be flown in to the besieged Marines across an air bridge that is always busy, always dangerous. Enemy gunners score a hit on an A-4 flown by Marine Major Bill Loftus. But Loftus is quickly recovered by Marine choppers and returned to Khe Sanh. The big cargo aircraft become known as mortar magnets. But in spite of the mortars, in spite of enemy anti-aircraft fire, in spite of bad weather, the air bridge is never cut. In the first month of the siege, Air Force C-130 and C-123 aircraft deliver nearly 11,000 tons of supplies and move more than 3,000 troops, refugees, and wounded in and out of the base. Their daily load averages as much as an 80-truck convoy. A handful of Air Force aerial port personnel, under constant enemy fire, load and offload as many as 30 aircraft in a day. As the supply by air continues, the Air Force coordinates intelligence from all sources to pinpoint the enemy positions. Air Force reconnaissance crews are able to penetrate the jungle canopy and zero in on enemy targets with highly sophisticated electronic and photographic devices that detect the enemy's slightest move. They often locate more than 300 targets a day. Giap's plan calls for a quick victory. He steps up the intensity of his assault, scores a hit on the Marine ammunition dump. On 23 February, 1,300 rounds slam into Khe Sanh. Casualties among the defenders mount. The Marines burrow deeper and call for suppressive fire from fighter aircraft. On the airstrip, the airlift planes meet increasing enemy fire. Intensifying barrage forces the planes to deliver the goods by parachute. The communists are steadily increasing their attack. The specter of Dien Bien Phu is revived in American headlines. But what the French lacked, the Americans have in overwhelming strength, the decisive element of air power. Coordinating around-the-clock strikes, airborne battlefield command and control centers in modified C-130 aircraft orbit Khe Sanh, enabling the airborne commander on the scene to talk with the Marines on the ground, the fighter aircraft pilots, and 7th Air Force headquarters in Saigon. Armed with the latest target information, the ABCCCs direct the forward air controllers, who in turn direct the fighter bombers to enemy positions within yards of the Marines' perimeter. B-52s with their sophisticated radars are able to strike in any weather. Each carrying more than 30 tons of bombs, blast enemy bunkers and supply dumps, devastating the surrounding landscape. At night, unseen and unheard, until their payloads hit, they strike terror into the hearts of the communist troops. The air effort is massive. In February and March, General Momeyer directs more than 21,000 sorties in defense of Khe Sanh. Of these, 2,500 are flown by the B-52s. During the same time period, Marine artillerymen at Khe Sanh and Army gunners firing from bases many miles away lobbed thousands of shells at the enemy. In March, about the time of the 14th anniversary of his victory at Dien Bien Phu, Giap orders the withdrawal of the first of 2 divisions which are then in the process of being destroyed. At the same time, the monsoon lifts, clearing the skies for a growing stream of airlift and medevac aircraft. Tactical fighters continue their precise attacks, complementing the heavy bombardment of the B-52s, increasing the pace of the enemy withdrawal. The Marines move out in pursuit of the enemy. Now the extent of the communist defeat becomes more apparent. The debris left on the battlefield is mute testimony. Stockpiles of ammunition, rockets, mortars, and automatic weapons, laboriously packed down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, are abandoned. Captured North Vietnamese troops provide added facts. One regiment is reported to have lost 75% of its 2,000 men. Mass desertions to escape the bombing are not uncommon. Giap's soldiers were existing on starvation rations. Total enemy losses are estimated at 15,000 men. The long siege is over. On April 7th, the President of the United States sends a message to the armed forces in Southeast Asia. The relief of the forces which have held the base at Khe Sanh is an occasion for me to express the pride and confidence I feel in those who are carrying forward the nation's struggle against aggression in Southeast Asia. The enemy intended to overrun the base at Khe Sanh. Less than 6,000 United States Marines and South Vietnamese Rangers, backed by our tremendous air capacity, pinned them down, kept them away from the populated areas, and imposed heavy casualties.
The time, 06:30, September the 7th, 1965. Mission, Operation Piranha, a 4-day search and destroy action by combined United States and Vietnamese military forces against a suspected stronghold of 2,000 Viet Cong guerrillas on the twin peninsulas of Batongan and An Key, 20 miles south of Chu Lai. For the men of the 1st Battalion, 7th Regiment, this was the sort of operation for which all Marines are qualified. Born of time, necessity, and circumstance, and nurtured to near perfection under fire during the Pacific Campaign of World War II, the amphibious assault has become the trademark of the Navy Marine Corps team, a symbol of their role in America's combat readiness. But even before the 1st Battalion had begun to assemble at its debarking stations at sea, the men of the 3rd Battalion, 7th, were forming up into copter-apportioned sticks for loading at a hastily constructed helipad near the outskirts of Chu Lai. This was the vertical envelopment doctrine in operation. Utilizing 3 centrally controlled helicopter squadrons, the men of the 3rd Battalion were airlifted to Landing Zone Oak, a strip of elevated ground running across the twin throats of Batongan and An Key. From here, they would act as a blocking force to the retreating Viet Cong as the 1st Battalion began its push from the beach. With the completed landing of the first wave of Marines, 16 of the choppers broke away from Landing Zone Oak and sped 10 miles south to the Republic of Vietnam stronghold at Quang Ngai. There they began the helilift of 2 Vietnamese battalions to Landing Zones Pine and Birch, located on the far side of the Song Chao Mae Dong River. By 09:45, the vertical envelopment was completed, and the stranglehold across the windpipes of Batongan and An Key stretched for a full 8 miles. By late morning, advanced Marine patrols had already moved in from the beach to their first objectives, and others formed up, ready to follow. On the outskirts of villages like Chao Mae Wan, civilians were quickly gathered together for safe transportation behind the Marine lines. And as they moved off, the Marines stopped small groups and asked the same question over and over again. Where are the Viet Cong? The answer that came back was always the same. They're gone. They left before you came. The expected Viet Cong resistance at the beaches had never materialized. And now, even further inland, only scattered sniper fire broke the calm. This was the penalty that the Marines had to pay for their own efficiency, the very strength of United States firepower that had won so many victories in the past had driven the Viet Cong to cover or full retreat. The possibility of any single big contact was going to be harder and harder to come by. As night fell on their first day ashore, the Marines dug in and waited. Finally, the word came back. Only 4 Viet Cong killed, 6 captured, 48 suspects being held. It was evident that an old, familiar pattern of battle was taking shape. The Marines had seen it before at places like Iwo Jima. Saipan, and Guadalcanal. 3 of the 4 Viet Cong killed on the previous day had been flushed from a cave. This could mean only one thing. The Viet Cong were there all right, but they'd have to be dug and blasted out. One key to the search and destroy operation was the jet hot pad at Chu Lai. Standing on strip alert, Marine attack jets were only minutes away from a platoon leader's radioed call for an airstrike, with almost any lethal combination of weapons he might want or need, from 20-millimeter aircraft cannon and high-velocity rockets or bombs to bullpup missiles. For the first time in Marine Corps history, control of the air support elements was handled by Marines circling above the battlefield at 18,000 feet. In the past, the DASC, or Direct Air Support Center, during such operations, has been located on a communications ship lying offshore. This time, a KC Hercules was outfitted to do the job. Its crews monitored requests from ground forces and assigned aircraft to requested strike areas. But if the innovations of the jet airstrike and DASC were important to the success of the Piranha campaign, the backbone of the attack was still the man on the ground, the man with the singular philosophy embodied in the words leadership and discipline. Combat is a test of courage and endurance, a forced inbreeding that teaches the individual to respond to a command under any conditions. It's a disciplined struggle for life, hinging upon the absolute control of those who command and the unswerving loyalty of those who follow. By the end of the second day, the Marines had confirmed 70 Viet Cong killed, 4 captured. By the end of the third day, the Viet Cong resistance was broken. One by one, the caves were opened up and the enemy rotted out. When the smoke had cleared over one hole, the Marines discovered, to their amazement, a limestone cavern over 6 feet high and 250 feet long. It yielded up the bodies of 66 dead Viet Cong. Up to that time, it was the largest single kill made by the Marines since their arrival in Vietnam. By September the 10th, it was all over. Batangan and An Key were secure. The 4-day total: 198 Viet Cong killed, 38 enemy captured, 265 VC suspects detained. While several elements of the Marine assault team were being withdrawn to another battle area west of Da Nang, others remained behind. All Americans in Vietnam, both military and civilian, know there's more than a fighting mission for them in their support of the embattled Republic of Vietnam. They have heard and understand the words of President Johnson, who said, "A nation cannot be built by armed power or by political agreement. It will rest on the expectation by individual men and women that their future will be better than their past."